the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month. My name is Andre. I'm with USA EBN, and I'm joined on the Zeta Report by Nancy Leader from ZetaTalk.com. Nancy, are you there?
I sure am. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to do end times clues. Now, this is not prophecy. This is things that are happening today that everyone is noticing, that hits the media. There's no question about it. And when you put it all together, anyone who says we're not in the end times is deluding themselves. But before we get into that, I want to read our standard disclaimer. In partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion, so bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. The rise in earthquakes is palpable and measurable, and as such, the USGS quickly began to tune them down, reducing the reported magnitude. This was observed over a decade ago by many who noted that the quake damage and scope was greater than the reported magnitude. Earthquakes would be removed from the quake database too, in front of the astonished eyes of observers. Nevertheless, the increase in frequency and strength was statistically measurable, and the charts show it. Earthquake clouds have been on the increase as a result. Known by the ancients and around the world, earthquake clouds forebode pending earthquakes, caused by various particle flows and water vapor coming from rock under pressure, repeated tension and release. Earthquake clouds appear in stripes in the sky. Quoting GIS development, the vapor erupts from an impending hypocenter to the surface by the crevices and rises up. It forms a cloud while encountering cold air. This kind of cloud, whose vapor is from an impending hypocenter, is denoted as an earthquake cloud. Quoting Wikipedia, they have been described in antiquity. Indian scholar, I'm going to mispronounce this name, Varahamihara, discussed a number of signs warning of earthquakes, including extraordinary clouds occurring a week before the quake. Light spires began appearing in the night sky. No one except the Zetas had an explanation. Due to increasing plate movements, methane pockets trapped under the surface were also being released by ground cracks, and methane, being lighter than air, rises. Set afire by friction in the clouds, they appear as spires or towers, often with smoke at the top. Quoting Xiamen in 2010, mysterious beams of light hanging in night sky over Xiamen. Xiamen Meteorologist Observatory said no such astronomical phenomenon was monitored by the observatory, but it was not a meteor shower. As explained by the Zetas, a slow swoosh, creating a spiral of heat that starts a tornado effect in the atmosphere. Where a slow explosion has passed, the smoke created can linger, looking like a dark tornado floating in the sky. Where the slow explosion occurs at night, The light can seem dramatic for the few minutes it lasts. End of the quote. Pretty pastel clouds have also begun appearing in the night sky, luminous pink and blue or cream-colored. Explained as reflected city lights, the city below does not have such a color, nor does an aurora explanation fit, as these clouds are circular, not vertical. Quoting the Daily Mail in 2008, London residents were left scratching their heads last night as a mysterious pink cloud drifted over the city. End of the quote. Per the Zetas, these neon clouds are due to chemicals in the wafting tail of Nibiru that can create a chemical light just as mankind's chemical light sticks can produce light. And what are the red domes seen lately? These are merely the familiar rainbows or sundog arrangements, but colored in red. Of course, this is the red dust in the tail of Nibiru, which has been wafting the Earth for almost 2 decades now. But when found on the ground, the establishment has their excuses ready. Oh, that's just a red dust from the Sahara, blown all the way to the U.S. or up into the UK, or even to Siberia or somehow to Australia. But red domes in the sky are new and shocking enough to those who have seen them that new excuses may have to be mustered. The reaction from most who see these red domes? Biblical. Signs in the skies, and definitely an end times sign. There are meteor showers and occasional comets, but most of these are on schedule. But for the past decade or more, there have been unannounced bolides screaming across several states or provinces. They are huge, noisy, and undeniable. They are also unexplained by the authorities, except for the claim that they are, asteroids. We've had a reported increase in those, too. When the bolides began increasing in the news, an embarrassment for the Nibiru cover-up, the news just stopped reporting them. They came from the direction of the sun where Nibiru lurks. Chelyabinsk in 2013 showed how to handle them. Shoot them down with a missile. That worked. In March 2019, the Russian Lomonosov satellite captured explosions on the outer edge of the atmosphere. Per the Zetas, this was petrol bubbles in the tail of Nibiru exploding when they reached access to oxygen. Now in 2020, they are dropping lower in the atmosphere while they burn. In February 2020, this fire in the sky was recorded on a garage video. There was no sound associated with the brief light in the sky. No lightning or bolide passing. No explosion nearby. Then in May 2020, there was a sound like a banshee screaming in the Texas skies. I mean, you gotta hear this. This was the night that monstrous hail the size of melons dropped on Texas. The Texas native recording the screech knew it was not a pressure valve release, nor a loud party. It was a bloody murder in the sky. Per the Zetas, this related to the Lomonosov petrol bubbles burning a path through the atmosphere, creating vibrating air masses. Trumpeting and roaring sounds from the Earth's surface have been moved around since 2011, starting with the trumpets of Kiev near the reservoir there, and then the horns of Belarus, the roar of Tampa Bay, the trumpets of Jerusalem, and the howl coming across the Canadian lakes. These are regions that are termed stretch zones by the Zetas, being pulled apart by plate movements and thus subject to vibration, where the rock layers are being pulled taut. The Zeta Talk website has these sounds available from a click of the mouse. Must be heard to be appreciated. Check newsletter issues 257 and 402. Then there is the hum heard in places not near a lake or bay or reservoir. The hum is also due to the stretch and has been recorded in Green Bay, St. Paul, Chicago, Atlanta, San Diego, Mexico City, the UK, and Munich, quoting KSTP in Minneapolis. The howling traveled for miles right through the walls of homes. It was very ghoulish. It sounded like a shrieking wail. It just sounded like a sound I'd never heard before. Quoting DNA Info in Chicago. The sound was quite variable, at times somewhat like a locomotive, or something like a giant fan, perhaps, or a grinding away. End of the quotes. Then there are signs in the sky, bright orbs around the sun, second sun sightings at sunrise or sunset, and on occasion even a string of pearls. A dramatic string of pearls was captured by hunters along the Missouri River, shining down through a break in the clouds. Per the Zetas, these pearls are moons tagging along with Nibiru, unable to leave old Nib due to its gravity pull. The second sun sightings at dawn or dusk are due to light from Nibiru itself bending to the curvature of the Earth, as light, especially red light, bends readily. All these signs are ignored by the establishment or claim to be sundogs or your imagination. But they are seen naked eye, photographed, and even show up on Soho images. None of these things were around before the last decade or so either. What signs have the critters given us? An increase in albinism, for one thing. Starting with the Lakota Sioux Indians' white buffalo legend, we have had an increase in albinism in various animals worldwide. From birds and whales and sharks and dolphins and hedgehogs and penguins and snails and no species is exempt. There is the increasing evidence of albinos in the animal kingdom where this rare event has become almost common. We have, for example, just the last couple of years, wild turkeys in Australia and Idaho, a penguin in a zoo in Poland, crows in Canada, a sparrow in New Zealand, a hummingbird in Ohio, and various songbirds in Tasmania, the Netherlands, and the UK. Small mammals around the world are turning white and being photographed by their astonished human neighbors. We have weasels in Scotland, a porcupine in Maine, a mink in Minnesota, a panda in China, a coon in North Carolina, woodchucks in Maine and Illinois, a hedgehog in the UK, and a quoll in Australia. This just in the last year or two. Rattlers in Texas, cobras in India, gators in Florida, and geckos in Japan are turning white. Per the Zetas, this is due to a roiling Earth core caused by the looming presence of Nibiru. Just as cave creatures do not need coloration for protection from the sun, the roiling Earth core has pushed the cave environment to the surface of the globe. This is confusing the DNA. Quoting Zeta Talk, why would life in dark caverns of the depths of the ocean be pale without color? If color were a genetic quirk, then why the almost total absence of color in creatures living in darkness? Coloration is influenced by radiation, just as tanning takes place upon exposure to sunlight. What is a little understood is that this phenomenon has two switches, one increasing coloration under certain radiation frequencies, but another reducing coloration under a different set of radiation frequencies. The core of the Earth, emitting in greater bursts the radiation her caverns and deep water creatures are bathed in, is confusing her surface creatures. Thus the white buffalo heeding the signals from the restless Earth. End of the quote. So in addition to the white buffalo calf, named Miracle, which was considered by the American Indians to be a sign of the end times, there have been albino deer in Pennsylvania and Germany, twin fawns in North Carolina, and moose in Canada. Thus we have white bats in Iowa and the Philippines, prairie dogs in Wyoming, squirrels in London, a guinea pig in Peru, and a chipmunk in New Hampshire. Like the canary in the coal mine who quickly dies from the methane in the air, thereby warning the miners of an impending explosion, dead birds falling from the sky and dead fish littering the shoreline are warning us of methane leaks. Due to the pushing and pulling on the Earth's plates, rock layers are pulled apart, releasing methane long trapped between layers of rock. Where birds are sensitive to methane in the air, fish likewise develop emboli in their bloodstreams from the presence of methane and die. All this is excused in the media as a lack of oxygen from pollution. Never mind that the locations do not line up. Did we have all these dead birds and fish a decade ago? It's not just the birds and fish either, as flocks of sheep and herds of Sagai antelope are sometimes found mysteriously dead. These are methane kills. Deepwater oarfish have been coming to the surface and found on beaches. This has been in the news since approximately 2013 and gets in the news as these deepwater fish are huge, up to 20 feet long, and are considered harbingers of earthquakes to come. Quoting CBS in LA, according to traditional Japanese lore, oarfish rise to the water's surface and beach themselves to warn of an impending earthquake, a notion that some scientists have speculated could be supported by the bottom-dwelling fish being more sensitive to seismic shifts. End of the quote. And fish have appeared in the Dead Sea, which lies between Jordan and Israel. Per the Zetas, this is due to an aquifer under Iraq being squeezed by the African roll, rolling toward the east during the wobble-induced plate movements. This is also per a biblical prophecy about the end times. Quoting Ezekiel, "There shall be a great multitude of fish. Fishermen shall stand along the shore from En-Gedi to En-Eglaim, and there will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the Mediterranean Sea, but the swamps and marshes will not become fresh. They will be left for salt." End of the quote. The Hadiths also have a prophecy about the deserts of Arabia becoming lush. Amazingly, this also has just occurred within this past year, hand in hand with the Dead Sea fish. Quoting Hadith number 2208, "The last hour shall not come till the land of Arabia once again becomes meadows and rivers." End of the quote. The daily Earth wobble, predicted in 2004 by the Zetas, is measurable and obvious these days for those with eyes to see. The sun is not rising nor setting where it ought, and this can be measured and compared against the official times and location expected. This is done daily by a little woman in Wisconsin who provides her readings to the pole shift Ning. It is officially measured and published by the Earth Orientation Center. The figure 8 of the daily Earth wobble was identified in 2004 by yours truly, working with an international team of 12 people to establish where and when their sunrise and sunsets occurred. This can be seen on world temperature maps as this or that part of the globe gets more or less sunshine. If you have not personally noted the daily wobble, you likely cannot miss the weather extremes. Too hot, too cold, too dry, or too wet. Joggers and T-shirts in Alaska while New York City is freezing. Recently, the Arctic had 86 degrees Fahrenheit, while just a week or so later, Utah and Montana had several inches of snow. The blending of the seasons has long been predicted by the Zetas, but we are not there yet. More to go. On May 29th, we had 6 inches of snow in Idaho, and on July 2nd, we had a blizzard in China. Snow in summer was not only a Zeta Talk prediction, it actually is a record in China 3,600 years ago, during the last passage of Nibiru. Written during the reign of Emperor Qin, circa 1,600 before Christ. In the 29th year of King Xin, the sun was dimmed. King Xin lacked virtue. The sun was distressed. During the last years of Qin, ice formed in mornings and frosts in the 6th month. Heavy rainfall toppled temples and buildings. Heaven gave severe orders. The sun and moon were untimely. Hot and cold weather arrived in disorder. The 5 cereal crops withered and died. End of the quote. Sounds like pretty close to what we're getting. That EMP is on the increase is evident in the number of large planes full of passengers going down suddenly, or the number of electric trains picking up speed suddenly and derailing. This is all camouflaged by claims that the pilot or engineer was drunk or suicidal, or various parts were defective. But what cannot be denied is that President Trump issued an executive order that the U.S. infrastructure should be checked and hardened to resist EMP. Why would he do that if EMP were not on the increase? Quoting the White House executive order, the federal government must foster sustainable, efficient, and cost-effective approaches to improving the nation's resilience to the effects of EMPs. End of the quote. Another summer solstice. On June 20th, rapt eyes watched for the heel stone at Stonehenge to light up as the sun fell upon it. Quoting stonesofstonehenge.org. Traditionally, the heel stone marks the place on the horizon where the summer solstice sunrise appears when viewed from the center of the stone circle. End of the quote. Well, this has not happened for several years, but the photos allowed to be taken are very controlled, mostly showing dancers or cloudy skies. This year, due to the COVID-19 panic, the public was not allowed, but no need for the cover-up to worry. The skies were just way too cloudy. The week before, a Stonehenge crop circle warned that the Earth wobble would interfere, and it did. Quoting Zeta Talk in their analysis of this crop circle, Nibiru is so visible to so many in so many ways that it is virtually undeniable. This design is showing 8 stones in the Stonehenge depiction because the daily Earth wobble forms a figure 8 during each day. The 8 blobs from the solar amoeba relate to this, saying that there are 8 possible positions of the sun as seen from Earth on the solstice, depending upon one's location on Earth. End of the quote. Then there was the eclipse of the sun on June 21st. This was to be visible across Saudi and India and all the way over to Taiwan, all virtually on the same latitude. Yet the results provided by AFP of shots taken in Saudi show the moon shadow coming from the lower right and exiting at the upper left. Slow showed the dark moon coming from the upper right and exiting at the lower right. Why would there be this variance? But midday for India is in the midst of a wobble tilt from the North Pole falling to the east, and for Saudi Arabia, the North Pole would be starting to fall to the west, and therein the difference. Manhattanhenge was a bust, too. This is where the rising or setting sun aligns with streets in Manhattan, so the sun is centered at the end of the street. It seldom gets mentioned these days as the sun is no longer cooperating. They blame the weather. This year it was supposed to happen on May 29th to 30th. One cannot find any photos for these dates on the internet, not even on Twitter, not a mention. The sun or even a sunbeam was not to be seen. So the Earth wobble affects the placement of the rising and setting sun. It is also about to pull the North American plate apart. On June 21st, Iceland began being hammered by large quakes. Then on June 23rd, a magnitude 7.7 quake occurred at the tip of Mexico. Run a line from the tip of Mexico to Iceland and one sees the points of rip clearly, where a fractured piece of the North American continent would drop away to the southeast, and yes, that fracture is right up the New Madrid fault line. Yep. If the ends of this line were loosening up, bottom to top, how long can the middle hold out? In the opinion of the Zetas, and quoting Zeta Talk on November 30th, 2019, the New Madrid adjustment will be triggered by the push against the tip of Mexico. And are we getting that now? Yes. Puerto Rico. For over a month, Puerto Rico has been hammered by quakes. Why just this spot? The South America roll is generating quakes up and down the Andes, and the Caribbean plate has been affected primarily by quakes in Central America. So why Puerto Rico? A look at the shape of the North American plate to beyond the Caribbean shows that that area toward Africa, it seems to be a tongue or a lob of rock. It kind of looks like an elephant's foot. It looks like an elephant put his rear left foot down there, and it fits it exactly so that it's bumping against Puerto Rico. It cannot push past Puerto Rico, and thus the pressure on Puerto Rico. Will this cause that portion of the North American plate, the southeastern part from the tip of Mexico all the way up to Iceland, etc., will it cause it to break off and move toward the northeast? This is the Zeta Talk prediction that when the new Madrid adjusts, the eastern part of the U.S. will move northeast, and the western part will move down to the southwest. So if the elephant's foot does not move and it's stuck there, the North America plate has little choice but to rip. And that's the end of my prepared comments, Andre. How are we doing on time?
Oh, we've got about 18 minutes left in the stream right now. Yeah. Well, we don't have to take it all. We can take the day off. Well, never. But interesting things going on with the quakes, and I with all the downgrades and stuff. I was watching quakes for a while, a couple of years. I was like every USGS app, like get all the alerts. But now it's if you're in the area and you feel something going on, or if you're in a quake-prone area, such as any part of California, really, or you know where you are. It's like, well, the big one will never happen here. Okay, well, you're rolling the dice, and it probably will. But it's hard to follow quakes because of the downgrades and the censorship, and now US EMC, is that the one that a lot of the people on the blog use? Is that the one, or US? I think it's something like that. But it's the one. It's the non-USGS. What as a user, what's the best site to follow earthquake tracking?
I don't know. I know that it seemed to me that about 7-8 years ago, the USGS took command worldwide, and they were a bully about it. And they said everybody has, and we'd have this. We're not going to report the magnitude until. Wait a minute. What is the US? Oh, the USGS is calling it thus. Or somebody will report it early, and then it'll be downgraded according to what the USGS wants. So I don't think it really matters. I go to the USGS just to get the overall picture, because when we have these big quakes in the level of city, they can't say, oh, it's nothing, go back to shopping. They have to admit that something happened. So I look more for the trends. And I look, in particular, Nancy, look for the locations, like this whole thing with Puerto Rico, to say, what does this mean?
Yeah, so how it applies pressure and then transfers that pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thing. What's going on with the plate movements? And before we forget, I want to mention the Chinese dragon. I got a question from China about what is this in Jinzhou province, which is inland. It's to the northeast of Tibet, and quite a bit, and it's in there, but it's a mountainous. It's where it's still rumpled, from the Tibetan area. Anyway. So I listened to it, and they gave the answer, and they said it's actually in the stretch zone, because Eurasia is a big plate that is being pulled all the way from London and France, etc., all the way across, above Turkey, and all the way to the Japan, and it's pulling, and it eventually, during the pole shift, per an opinion of the Zetas, will rip a new inland bay up through Persia, up to the Ural Mountains, to where it'll be like the St. Lawrence Seaway, but over there, right? So that's a lot of tension. So it's being pulled apart. You know, they had something about an inactive, extinct volcano that was inland just above North Korea, and this was they were watching the magma chambers fill up to 40%, and they said, "What? You know, this is dead now for almost 500 million years. You know, why is it acting this way?" And it was because the North America plate lobs over all the way down to Kamchatka, and being in a bow, the bow wants to spring back open, and therefore it's pushing up against this area. So that's one sign of plate movement. But then this whole thing about the dragon in the mountains, and you have to hear it, you know, I'm going to try to bring it up and play it
that'd be cool.
I recorded it. Yeah, because anyway, it sounds like an animal being tortured or something, but it's so loud. You know, it's definitely not a critter.
Okay, and the explanation of that is the expansion of it. Ooh, whoa.
All right, did you get it?
Whoa.
Are you still there?
I've never heard it. Yeah,
right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they heard, and thousands of people were going up into the mountains to listen to this. And of course, you should see the jokes. You know, oh well, you know, it's Hillary Clinton from the gates of hell, or whatever. You know, different jokes.
Sure.
But
yeah.
But what it is vibrating mountains. And of course we've had the trumpets of Kiev, the horns of Belarus, you know, the howling around Tampa Bay, up there in Canada. It sounded like Godzilla stomping across, you know, in Saskatchewan, and on, and the hums, you know, that appear all over the place. So this is nothing new, but this has only come about since 2009, 10, 11. You know, we didn't used to have this. We didn't have this stuff when I was a kid. I think we might have had the Teos hum. That was the only one that was around 20 years ago, but this stuff is all new. So the mountains are vibrating because they're being pulled apart over there. And the way the Zetas put it, they said the mountains are in pain. And I actually got email from people asking if mountains can feel pain. Talk about...
Wow. Well, I mean, maybe. Doesn't rock have consciousness at some level? I mean,
well, some people, there's some theories that planets have souls and all this stuff. You know, I don't know. So
going off
anyway,
into the woo-woo.
Yeah. So there it is. It's
well,
anyway, I'm glad you could hear the dragon.
That was, where can we find that audio? Do you have it on the Pole Shift name or the Zeta Talk website?
Yes, I'm putting it up with an email. Let me think. Maybe I can add I'm putting it up with one of my newsletters, sort of middle of July, not this week, but maybe I think next week or the week after. You know, so it'll be there. You know, and what I should do is add it to the new Zeta Talk. I'll make a note to do that. You know.
Well, another quick question on that dragon sound. So this was only being heard at high altitudes. So
well, they went up into the mountains
to hear it.
Yeah. It's not a real high mountain. They look like they're not foothills. They're sort of smallish mountains. It's an agricultural area. I think they grow rice there. You know, where they have the terraces going down and the like. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
So what's I was gonna just quickly ask because I think it's fascinating. Does it cycle over and over like that womp, and then comes back and then stronger and then or is it just a one-time event?
Yeah, it's like it's got its foot in a trap and nothing's going to let it go, right?
Oh wow!
People think it's an animal, huge animal, and they're looking around for dragon
big
bones.
Ones.
You know, because they can't understand what the noise is. It's fascinating. Yes.
Is there any updates? I know we don't really talk about politics here because you know the nature of our network and the information that we provide is more about preparedness. But I will say that with the current situation, I won't say the words, but you know what that provides lockdowns and restrictions for folks out there. Have the Zeta
Yeah.
talked about anything going on with possibly the elections being delayed or elections being
They said
tampered with at all?
they said there was a possibility. They said would not be canceled but might be delayed, because of inability to get to the polls. Now I can't get
Okay.
they're not allowed to give dates. I can't get them to give me a date for when the New Madrid adjustment will happen because they're not
I'll
allowed.
ask them.
But they did say they'll ignore you too. They did say a year ago in 2019 that by the end of this year that FEMA would be busy with New Madrid problems and martial law as a result of that. That sounds to me like we're going to have a lot of chaos before the end of this year, next 6 months, right? They will not
Right.
say if the 2020 election is going to happen or not, or any circumstances, etc., or what's going to happen. My personal feeling is that there will be a push for mail-in ballots by the Democrats because there is such an opportunity for fraud. Just terrible. They just mail these things out and they're willy-nilly. The stuff comes back from who knows who it is. That I don't know. I think it's going to be caught up in court challenges. It may rise up to the Supreme Court and all that and be tied up and delayed. And I just don't know. Now, one thing that I was reading a lot of articles yesterday that we're saying don't take these polls too seriously. It looks like Biden is just whooshing ahead, but Truman and Dewey was I think 11 points ahead, and Truman was sure to. Like in 2016 when they kept printing Hillary Clinton's photo on magazine covers saying "Madam President," and then they had to throw all those away. That in fact, here comes Truman, and he whisked right in. Never mind the 11-point poll difference, and then we had Dukakis and Bush, and some polls had Dukakis up 17 points above, but it was certainly 13 points above. It's even better than what Biden has right now. Oh, he's got it. Remember Dukakis, and he let a prisoner out on furlough, and the prisoner committed murder or something like that, and it was like, oh, soft on crime, and Bush whisked right in. Never mind, and Dukakis would pop up out of a tank with a helmet on. He was supposed to be tough,
that didn't
and
fit
everybody
quite
said,
at all.
And it didn't. Nobody bought it.
Looked like an idiot.
That guy out. Yeah. So you and the main thing is that there was a guy, a professor, I think in New Hampshire, who says the last 24 of the 26 elections he called the winner, and he's that accurate. And so he was being interviewed a couple of days ago, and he said, "Well, what about the polls? I mean, they got Biden running away with it and all." And he said, "Oh no, I look at the real polls." Oh, well, what are the real polls? And he said, for instance, in the primaries in New Hampshire, Biden came in fifth. He said there has never been a president who didn't win New Hampshire, for one thing. And he said, I think what was the other thing he was saying? I can't remember. There was another indicator. Well, just look at the crowd sizes, that Trump is pulling in the crowd sizes and all that. It's the intensity of support, and Biden is soft there, but Trump, the people that like Trump, man, they're with him for life, So I don't know, but what's going to happen? It could go a lot. Well, imagine if we had the New Madrid ahead of the election, that there would people have said to me, well, everyone rallies around the president when the nation's really in trouble, and that'll be it. He'll be the guy that's calling the shots. And
I think that's. Didn't we rally around this latest outbreak? And we know we all did our part to help out. I mean, I think there's a lot of, depending on what channel you're watching, of course.
Right. So that would be expected, that he would be and gather a lot of support because he would be out there, directing FEMA and doing this and that, whatever was necessary, right? But if it happens after the election, it would have no effect on the election, but it is so. But if you have people unable to get to the polls, and I don't think it's going to be a COVID infection, because I personally, the Zeta said by midsummer it will be dramatically easing. Well, what's midsummer? It's not June 20th. That's the start of summer. Runs 3 months. Midsummer is like very early August, right? A couple days into August. Well, we're not there yet, and right now we're getting herd immunity increase. Those areas of the country that were, squashed down, locked down, that type of thing, we didn't develop herd immunity, and then we had this, to the beach and wait, and the Black Lives Matters marches and all this stuff, and everybody got exposed, and now we have what we would have had in March, had it not been for all the lockdowns. So we're just developing herd immunity, plus getting the virus out in the sun, where it's killed within 2 minutes. Homeland Security did a study of this. 2 minutes in the open air in the sun, tick, gone, right? And they say it seems to be less fatal. It's weakening, that kind of thing. So anyway, so I figure that, the herd immunity is building. We're going to have the sun, killing it off. We will have some hot spots here and there, but people will be able to go to the polls by the fall, right? So I don't know what's going to happen. It depends on the date, and we may start having some earthquakes in the U.S., not the biggie, not the big New Madrid. I don't know, but the big New Madrid is supposed to be so devastating. It'll rip up the Mississippi. This part goes west, this part goes east. All the bridges will rip. Mind you, this is where the gas and oil crosses over to get to the East Coast. Up under the seaway, all the way up to the New England states, Cleveland, all those cities, everybody falls down. Then we have a big void ripping open in the Atlantic that the water pours into, rebounds, and goes toward Europe. Europe will be just devastated by 200 to 300 foot tidal waves. London, Paris, all this stuff, right? But we also get a rebound at 50 foot that comes back against the U.S. Well, that's Washington, D.C., which is a lowland swamp, 50 foot of water.
Swamp.
So everybody has to go to Denver now. The whole government is disrupted, as we move to Denver and on and on. And so this is a big deal. Even if we have only some starts of it, that it'll be horrific. And meanwhile, Nibiru is so obvious in the sky. So the Zetas were asked, what are people going to do? If we don't get an admission by the powers that be that Nibiru is real and all that, and we're not going to, the Zetas said they're going to turn to their religion. All religions have some talk about the end times, and they're going to believe their own eyes and turn to religion and ignore the establishment, where the wealthy and the politicians go into the bunkers, and eventually people go off into the hills to grow beans. They ignore government. They use the barter system, and the elite sort of diminish. And the military, even though we're into martial law, will so many of the soldiers will go AWOL. They will just vanish, and they've got their own dependents to worry about, wife and kids and all that, so that it will just kind of melt away, and we'll have survival camps, and that's where we're going, folks. So read that last month's issue on saving seed and get serious about this stuff. Building windmills from car parts, chickens and goats, gardens. Get serious about this stuff, because if you don't feed yourself, nobody else will.
Yeah, I tell you what, if this last lockdown experience, we talked, I feel like we've gone to this month number 4 that, first we were talking about toilet paper. Ha, 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 ha. It'll be over a couple weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if this last experience for you and your family didn't wake you up into what actual necessity and needs are for your own personal household, maybe, do a little review on the YouTube site that you're listening to right now. Just go through the more recent episodes and dig in there. You can also check out zetatalk.com and poleshift.ning.com.
That's it.
And over at USA EBN, usaebn.org. We have a lot of preparedness articles there, so check that
Yes.
out as well.
Yes.
Thanks, Nancy.
Yes.
We
Okay.
made it.
Same to you. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Bye all.